Going everyone? This is Animesh from Learn How to Train, and today I'm going to help you guys understand how to program your own training week. So I have a presentation prepared that we will get into, and we're just going to figure this out together. This is going to work really well for you if you are a working professional. The persona that I've kept in mind is that of a working professional that is also a hobbyist athlete. So what that basically means is, like, let's say you've got your normal day job, and at the same time you also have like a sports hobby that you're pursuing, and obviously if you realize that you need to do some sort of training to keep up with the sport that you're doing, right? Or maybe you're not doing a sport right now, but you're a working professional with some athletic dreams and aspirations. Maybe there's like a high altitude trek that you want to do at some point, or you just want to just stay prepared and be in shape for whenever a goal catches your curiosity, intrigues you, you want to be able to get after it. This is how you would go about programming your training week. So let's have a look at it and yeah, see what this is. So this basic foundational microcycle programming. Programming has exercise programming has three layers to it. There's macrocycles, there's mesocycles, and microcycles. It's pretty self-explanatory. Macrocycles is the top layer, the umbrella overview of what the entire training has to look like right up until your goal is achieved. So, for example, Olympic athletes have 4 year long macrocycles, right? That's one Olympic cycle for them. That's one macrocycle. Then that's divided into like a mid layer. Then you basically zoom your lens and go into like a mid layer of, okay, if I have a 4 year long macro cycle, or let's say to keep things simple, let's say that we have a 1 year long macro cycle, right? Or one entire season leading up to some competition or some goal. Now I want to break that into some mesocycles. So that would basically, for the average person, it would mean breaking your training down to 1 month training blocks. Or if you have ascertained your training goal, then you basically do block programming. So, like, let's say if you have a sports tournament that is happening at the end of this year and you have 6 months to go, so you have a 6 month long macro cycle. Now, instead of breaking down into months, you might just break it down into, okay, general training, specific training, peak phase, taper phase, and then you have your tournament or something like that. So your four mesocycles could be those phases that you add into this entire training block. And then microcycle is basically breaking down each phase into units of programming that you can, build on. This is basically where the programming happens. And then every unit what changes to make, what incremental changes to make to your program so that you're progressing towards your goal, because goes without saying your training cannot look exactly the same every single week of the year or every single week of the training cycle. So what we're looking at today is a week as a microcycle, right? We're just trying to understand if we are working professionals that have athletic hobbies, or maybe some goals that we want to get after, or for general physical preparedness, how do we program a training week? So the first thing that we want to start off with is a perspective shift. If you are watching this video, I want you to understand this is not a 3 month long transformation program or anything. If you are on my channel, you probably already know what we're about. If you're not onto what we're about, then please understand that 3 month transformations, say 9 week transformations, and all of that. This is marketing gimmicks to make you buy into their product or service, whatever it is, and that's how they get you to the bottom of the funnel from the top of the funnel and all that. That shit does not matter. We want to understand that fitness and wealth building, they mimic each other. What does that mean? That basically means that your fitness is going to exponentially increase if you have patience, right? It increases exponentially over a decade, over many years. But in the short term, you just have to have consistency and not ask for anything in return. Usually, the perspective that people have around training is that, okay, I am going into a training session. If I sweat a lot, if this session kicks my ass, and if I'm sore for like the next 2 days, then it was a valuable session. That's not what we're going to do. It does not matter if you have an objective in mind and your sessions are programmed according to that, then how do you end up feeling after the session in terms of just physical tiredness or fatigue does not come into play at all. Every single phase of training has a specific purpose. If that purpose is being solved by fundamentally correct training practices, then you are on track. Otherwise, you're not on track, and that's objectively the only thing that matters. How you feel after a session is not what we base our, our quality checks on as far as training is concerned. So the perspective I want you guys to have is that you need to understand that fitness and well building, they mimic each other, right? In the short term, you don't get a lot. If you're patient in the short term and you keep making those deposits on a consistent basis, if you have micro consistency and macro patience, if you can hold it out for a year, 2 years, 3 years, that's when the real magic starts to happen. And within a decade, you are without a doubt going to be in like the top percentile of fitness in whatever your age category is. If you're able to stick to this, that's the 1% mindset that we want to have with fitness. No quick fixes or transformation. That's not what we're doing here. And we work on foundations first. So this video is for learning how to program your training week. Train if you are if how to train if you are a working professional with the sports, how you've already covered this. This is going to make a lot of sense to you, and I'm going to just make a wild guess that if you are watching this video, you probably already have a low training age. Let me explain what training age means. Training age is the time that you've spent training consistently, right? So for anyone that has not been in the gym for at least a year in recent past, we're not talking about back in your school days or whatever that is, that does not matter anymore. If you have not been in the gym for at least 6 months to a year, consistently training towards something actively, then your training age is low, right? Training age is basically how much time have you spent in the gym training consistently? How many years do you have under your belt actively? Not, I had 5 years, 20 years ago, not something like that. But, like in the last 5 years, how much have you been training? That's basically what training age is. If you're watching this video, people that have a high training age, is one thing common about all of them. They've all figured their training out. They know what works for them, and they're probably not on this video, right? If they are on this video, it's probably is refreshing their foundations to teach someone else, right? But if you are a trainee, not a trainer, you probably already have a low training age, and then this video is exactly for you. And this is for people that want to work on general physical preparedness. That let's understand what general physical preparedness means, or what physical preparedness training means. Cut in short, it's just basically foundational training. It's working on building a certain threshold of all the physical qualities that an individual has that gives you like a basic level of preparedness which you can use to enter either a competition cycle or a sports specific training cycle, or really any goal specific training cycle. So it's a key block of training that needs to be added before any goal specific training can begin. And it matters because it makes your goal specific training more efficient and increases the return on investment and decreases the chances of failure. See, guys, here's the thing about goal specific training, right? Whether you're training, whether you know exactly the competition or the athletic goal that you have in mind, that okay, this is a sport that I play, 6 months down the line, I have a tournament coming up, and this is exactly what I'm preparing for. So that's a specific goal, but that's a sport. So we say sport specific training. Or you enter a competition cycle, or you enter a goal specific training. It might not be a sport, it might just be like an individual hobby that you're pursuing, but you have an end date that okay, I am going for this high altitude trek, I'm trekking the base camp of Annapurna in 8 months from now. So I have this on this particular day, I have my goal in mind, something like that. Either way, whatever goal you have, it's all of these different types of goals that we're going to contain two things. Number one, it's going to have complex motor tasks that require high level of neuromuscular coordination. So when you clearly define a goal that this is a sport for which I want to be in top shape for, or this is a activity for which I want to be in top shape for within these months, you've defined exactly how you need to move your body, what you need to do with your body, how intense it's going to be, how long in time duration it's going to be, and all of those different parameters that you use to kind of capture the essence of what it is that you're trying to do. And whatever that is that you're trying to do, it's a complex motor task. It's like a culmination of a lot of different ways in which your body and your mind has to come together so that you are able to follow through and achieve this particular goal, this particular task, whatever it is, right? Second thing that this sort of training is going to have is going to be intense working sets that drain the energy maximally, and they require long periods of rest. So whenever you're trying to be in peak shape for anything, peak training for anything requires maximal effort in different capacities. Some sports are heavy on speed, some sports are heavy on strength, some are heavy on endurance. Either way, when you're trying to reach a peak state of preparedness for whatever sport it is, whatever it requires, the training also happens. Training also demands that you train at maximal levels so that you can reach that peak, right? And that sort of training is typically quite demanding. The working sets are quite intense, and it also drains you so much that you require really long periods of recovery, right? And this sort of training comes with a fair amount of damage to the muscle tissue. That's just part of the process. Your body takes on wear and tear. No matter what goal you're pursuing, any goal specific training is going to have these things in particular, these features, right? So when the foundation required to handle this sort of training stress is missing, one of these outcomes are highly likely. Number one, you are either going to experience crippling amounts of CNS and body fatigue. So this mind fatigue, body fatigue is just going to be so much that your recovery times become pathological. For example, let's say if you're out of nowhere, you have no foundation training, no general physical preparedness training, you just decide, okay, today I am going to start training for a grappling competition, right? And I know that in, like, let's say in a grappling competition, I have to throw people. So day one, I get into the gym and I start doing a very complex exercise that includes me picking up heavy weights and just throwing it around or moving it at high amounts of speed. I do one set, I do two sets. Two things are going to happen. Number one, it's going to drain me out so much that my workout is just going to end there. It's just going to be too overstimulating for my mind and my body. For me to be for me to be able to do that second set, third set, fourth set, whatever is required, is just not going to happen. And we as trainers have seen this happen many, many times. Somebody that's not prepared for this level of training, they go out and do a set or two like that, and they're just out of it after that. Second thing that might happen is you might make it out of the session, but then the soreness and the damage that your body will take on, which the worst of the worst, you're supposed to recover from it within 3 days, within 72 hours, so that you can have a normal training week, even when you're peaking as an athlete. If you're not able to do that, sometimes what happens is your recovery time goes up to 7 days, 10 days. And if it's been 10 days, it's been 2 weeks, and now you're recovering from that one workout you did 2 weeks ago. It was so intense. So your recovery times, they become pathologically long. Second, as a result of this, your motivation to continue just dips, and the perception of a goal that you have, you thought, okay, in 6 months, I will be probably able to achieve this. Now it becomes so out of reach because you're thinking, okay, it took me this long to recover from one session for this specific goal. Maybe I'm just not meant for this. Like, how will I ever train and be ready to do this sport or do this tournament or do this task within 6 months if I can't even do one single session? So your motivation just dips. Your perception of achieving the goal becomes just really out of reach and far fetched. And as a result of all of this, usually 80% of the time, people end up quitting their training within the first 30 to 90 days. This is why GPP training is very important. It's basically the training that you need to do to feel fully prepared to do the training that you need to do to achieve goals. So super important to understand. There's a type of training that gets you to achieve your goals. But are you even prepared to do this kind of training? That's a question you need to ask yourself. If your training age is not high, then you probably are not prepared. And that is why it makes sense for you to do GPP training first. General physical preparedness, improve and build a baseline level of a lot of physical quality so that you have this foundation that you can use to then take some of these physical qualities as and when required according to your sport demand or task demand to their very logical peaks. And then you show up and you perform. So GPP training is the training that you do to feel fully prepared to do the training that you need to do to achieve goals. This sort of training, you focus on improving your aerobic capacity, so your hearts and lungs are they able to support the muscles or not, they support the work or not. Improve muscular endurance. Are the muscles able to endure the amount of work that you need to be doing or not? And a wide variety of general motor skills and physical attributes. So in this sort of training, we're not really specifically going after strength or power or speed or endurance or anything like that. We're just, just in regular intervals, we're just focusing on everything. Instead of let me try to see to what peak I can take my strength, I'm just going to see how far up can I bring all of my physical qualities, my strength, my speed, my flexibility, my endurance, my power, and my ability to just move around in a lot of different ways, all of these different things, right? That's basically what you do in GPP training. GPP training is when you look at the feature of a training microcycle like this, like what does GPP training on a weekly basis look like? You've got to be training frequently. Your training has to be highly variable. Your training has to be low in intensity and it has to be moderate to high in volume. So really volume is the only parameter that you're using in GPP training to kind of do the progressive overloading across the weeks. So like let's say if GPP training, you're planning a 4 week long mesocycle, right? A 4 week long block of GPP training. This every week you will make sure you're training frequently, your training is highly varied, your training is low in intensity, The volume is moderate to high. So you start off with moderate volume, but if you're able to cope up with the training stress, then you basically increase the volume week after week. You do not increase the intensity or the variability or the frequency of training. Those things are already there. You play around with the volume of training week after week within that basic mesocycle. The adaptations that you get from this sort of training, like we've already discussed, the muscles, they become, when you do training like this, that is highly frequent, highly variable, low in intensity and moderate to high in volume, progressively overloading across the weeks, then your muscles become well adapted to endure long durations of work, because that is the type of work that you're doing here, right? Your hearts, my fucking god, your heart and your lungs become well adapted to support the muscles that are doing the work, right? Your recovery time, as a result of both of these things, your recovery time between sets and between training sessions, it improves. This is what we need. Your capacity to handle training stress improves, and as a result of all of this, your general physical preparedness improves. So, as a person, after you are done with a GPP block of training, you become well adapted to handle training stress. Now you are ready to begin entering that goal specific training phase where you're maybe now taking, okay, if my sport is a speed sport, then I'm going to start focusing on speed more. If my sport is a strength sport, then I start focusing on strength more, etc., etc. So, what can a training week look like in a GPP phase of training, right? So, we want to cover about 90 minutes of cardio. All hail fucking Andrew Huberman. That dude has given you endless counts of evidence that 90 minutes of cardio at the very base, at the very, very basic level of training, this is what you want to be covering. Even from a health perspective, forget about performance and fitness. From a health perspective, 90 minutes of zone 2 cardio a week is what we want to go for. So along with this, you want to clock in about 2 to 3 training sessions covering all the basic movements, guys. So I'm not looking to be in the gym like 6 times in a week, fucking doing push pull legs and all that shit. This is GPP training. You're just training your body to be well adapted in all the physical attributes that you have. So you want to be in the gym 2 to 3 times a week lifting weights and doing all the basic movements, your hinges, your push, your pull, knee dominant squats, hip dominant lower body lifts, your side bending the spine, you're flexing the spine, extending the spine, and what else is there? Like rotating the spine. So all these basic things you want to be doing, fitting it into 2 to 3 sessions in a week. So you have about 90 minutes of cardio in a week. You have about 2 to 3 lifting sessions in a week. Really depends on your time schedule. And then we want to build in a daily joint care routine. This is very important. I consider this as like a part of the health layer of your performance, fitness, and health system, right? Health is at the very, this comes right along with your 8 hours of sleep and making sure you're eating, the right amount of food that you should be eating. So daily joint care routine that focuses on a foundational level of tendon training. So a lot of isometrics. So that, because if you're preparing for sports, it's not just about how much muscle you have. It's also about how much stress your body can overall take. And that's where tendons come into play. So basic foundation level of tendon training, isometrics, plyometrics, reciprocal training, and all that, and co-contraction training. So again, a lot of isometrics and joint mobility work, specific joint mobility work, right? So we want to look at all of these things, all these three things. Okay, my daily joint care routine, my 2 to 3 lifting sessions, and my 90 minutes of cardio. How do I want to program these things? I want to program these things by keeping the key features of GPP training in mind. What are the key features of GPP training? The key features of GPP training is that everything needs to be highly varied. Everything, you need to be training frequently. So if you're doing 90 minutes of cardio every single week and you're doing 3 lifting sessions, that's quite a frequent, like that's a high frequency of training, I would say. Everything has to be low intensity, so you're not trying to reach failure or do like a 8 rep max, 10 rep max, or anything like that right now, right? No ego lifting in GPP phases. And and then you have your intensity is low and your volume is moderate to high. So if, like, let's say week one you start off with moderate volume of training, slowly start increasing the volume of training week after week until your GPP training is over. So your lifting sessions, they will cover, see, what did we say? We said that it has to be highly varied. So your 3 lifting sessions, you have to figure out a way to cover your push, pull, knee dominant exercises, hip dominant exercises, spine rotation, spine bend, lumbar flexion. So sort of thrown in a whole bunch of things here that I would program in a GPP phase of training. All of these things have to be covered. Right away, you're going to see that this is a lot different than your standard gym program. That's not what we're trying to achieve. Bodybuilding is not the only goal that we have in mind. Our goal is to just generally prepare the body to be able to do whatever the fuck it wants. Cardio sessions, again, varied modality. So, if you're doing, let's say if you're a beginner, like if you're a novice, you start off with, to cover 90 minutes of cardio in a week, you start off with maybe 6 sessions of 15 minutes or 5 sessions of 18 minutes. That's going to kind of give you around 90 minutes of training in a week. Now, we know that GPP training, we want to keep things varied, right? So, and we want to make sure that the intensity is low. So, what do? We basically vary the modalities as much as possible. There are other ways to vary your training, but in this case, we can just simply vary the training modalities. Instead of, what this basically means is that instead of going out and running 6 times a week, maybe you can bike sometimes, maybe you can go for a hike, maybe you run, you swim, jog, do whatever you can, but keep it as varied as possible in the GPP phase, right? Intermediate people, again, also, if this is just like a walk in the park for you, then yes, you want to have good ROI for your training, the amount of time that you're putting in every single day. So maybe do 3 sessions of 30 minutes instead of doing this. Or you start off with this and then you progress to this. And your daily homework, which is the tendon care, the joint care part, you perform your isometrics at specific joint angles to make sure your tendons are being loaded and your tendon capacity is increasing. Then you do your plyometrics as well if you are not running too much. If you are already running like 6 times a week, then maybe doing entry level plyometrics is, don't need it, because you already have that that hopping volume down. Maybe just do upper body plyometrics, but plyometrics have to be a part of isometrics. Plyometrics is what helps you train your tendons to be able to move as you want to be moving in different aspects of life. And then for joint care, we do ultra high rep range movement. So, this applies specifically for joints that are hurting and stiff and tight, but mostly for all joints as well, especially if you're like a working professional, your age is increasing, you still want to be active and do all kinds of things and have goals and all that shit. You want to be hitting your high rep range joint movements. And when I say high rep range joint movements, that means maybe you're putting in like 2, 3 sessions in a day, covering 300 to 500 reps of everything, right? So this that high, that's where the real change, that's where your joint starts feeling like actual butter. 10 reps of, like, let's say if I'm trying to, my neck is stiff and I'm trying to do a joint care routine for my neck. If I just do this 10 times a day and that's all that I do, it's nothing. If you really want this to be effective in a way that, okay, actually my mobility is increasing, the stiffness is going away, I want to be increasing the stimulation in some way. I have no load here. So how do I increase the stimulation? So if you have, workload is a product of volume and intensity. If you cannot increase intensity, what do? You increase the volume. And for a simple movement like this, the volume naturally has to be really, really high. Otherwise, it will not make any sense. The body will not even pick it up as training stress, and the body will not adapt. You're not giving the body the stimulus that it requires to adapt. So to give the body the stimulus that it requires to adapt, so that our training actually has some sort of an ROI, and this is part of training, you want to make sure that your movements are in at least the 100 to 300 range within a session. So if you're doing 100 reps in one session, you're doing 3 sessions in a day, that gives you 300 sessions around every single joint that you're addressing. So you can maybe start off with that and then keep increasing it to 500. Something is injured, you go to 1,500. That means, 300 reps every session, 5 times in a day or something like that. So yes, these things require that much amount of care, and some specifications come into play when you have injury. So this is exactly what I was trying to explain. You'd work in the 300 to 500 rep range for all the joints that you want to be mobilizing and taking care of on a daily basis. But let's say if something is injured or hurt, it needs extra care. So those reps have to be ramped up. Those particular joints have to be given extra care. So those specifications come into play. If you have all of this programming, it's just like a general idea of how to program your week, but you will have to make different specifications, keep different things and take different things in account if you have injuries, or if you're trying to balance your training with like a sports skill training session, right? Because then you're not just trying to kind of program your training around the training fatigue itself, you're also trying to make sure that you're showing up to your sports and skill training sessions with no CNS fatigue or minimal CNS fatigue and body fatigue. And also, there is obviously going to be like an interference effect between these two things, because they're not the same. The sports and skill training session, they have different demands, different requirements, different aftermaths that your body has to suffer because of this. Same goes for your strength training. So when you try to juggle these two things together, there is an interference effect, and you need to know how to take care of that interference effect in a way that your training is actually conducive. Same thing applies if you're trying to balance like a GPP training with a body recomposition goal. This is super important to understand. when you do GPP training, when you do any training, a little bit of body recomposition is going to happen. You end up losing some fat, gain some muscle, all of that is there. Yes. So, all right, we lost the internet for a second, but anyway. So, yeah, so a little bit of body recomposition does happen when you are, whatever type of training you're doing, if there's going to be some sort of body recomposition, but that's not necessarily the primary goal of GPP training. So like we said, the general primary goal of GPP training is to, you know, build the foundation required to handle the sort of stress that you will have to handle when you're doing a goal specific training block. That's basically what you do with GPP training, the training that you do to feel fully prepared to do the training that you need to do to achieve goals. Now, that does not necessarily mean that fat loss is going to be a sure short outcome of this sort of training, or muscle gain is going to be a sure short outcome of this sort of training. That may happen, may not happen. Even if it is happening, it may not happen to the level to which it would have happened if body recomposition was the primary goal of training. So when body recomposition is the primary goal of training, you have a different style of training. You have a different style of calculating your macronutrients, your food intake, balancing energy in versus energy out, and all that shit. But that's not the primary goal here. So if you are trying to juggle a body recomposition goal along with GPP training, then that is a different set of that's a different ball game. Different things will come into account, and you will have to, you know, uh, keep those things in mind while you're programming, right? So this is like the general format, and then these three are like special cases. You have injuries if you're trying to balance your GPP training with the sports skill training sessions, or if you're trying to balance your GPP training with the body recomposition goals, then all of this will slightly change or become more nuanced, actually. So guys, yeah, this was like the scope of this workout. I just want to give you guys some basic ideas so that you can maybe sit and do your own programming if you would like to. But if you do not want to do that, I do offer free one-on-one calls. All you have to do is just get in touch with me and we can set it up. And guys, like I've been in this industry for 6 years. I fucking hate getting people on calls and trying to sell them into buying some sort of shit. You're just not. I'm not going to do that with you. I do not really focus a lot on getting people. Like, this is where I filter out my clientele, right? So my whole idea of doing these one-on-one calls is because number one, when I get on a call with any one of you and I talk shop for an hour, I get to learn from it. You get to learn from it as well. That in itself is quite fulfilling for me. Gives me ideas, gives me material for my work, my research. And if it helps you, well and good, great. If it helps you so much that you end up working with me, then I have the exact person that I want to be working with. That's exactly who I want to be working with, right? If things don't work out, I filter out my clientele right there. Then we're not like a right fit for each other. So it's on these calls, and this is coming from from an experience of also having been on the other end of the spectrum where I've gotten people on calls in jobs and I've had to like sell the training to them. So I'm not going to do that. If you get on a call with me, we are going to talk shop for whatever amount of time, 30 minutes, an hour. If we are into it, we might let it go on, make a fucking podcast out of it. Who cares? Right? But these calls are actually for people that are interested in training, they're curious about training, you want to talk shop. You hit me up and we will set one of these calls up. And it's guaranteed to help you out in some sort of way or form. And maybe you can buy me a cup of coffee or something like that. So or we end up working with each other, which is best case scenario for both of us. Whatever the case is, I want you to understand and not have any resistance about getting on this call. This is specifically a talk shop call, help you out call, no strings attached. I'm not trying to sell you on anything. You're all adults here. We understand when that shit happens. Everyone can smell like a sales pitch from far away. There's not going to be any of that. So I am offering this. If all of this gave you enough insight, you still want some help, still have some doubts, you want some clarity on some sort of topics. Let's get on a fucking call with me, man. Let's get on a call. Let's talk shop. Let's see what's what. So that's it from my end today, guys. That's what we have done.